Thank you for inviting me, and it's good to be here. For some reason, I'm feeling a little nervous today. I don't know why. It doesn't usually happen with me. So, what I'd like to do to start off with is be a little vulnerable, so I can get this nervousness out of the way. And what I'd like to do, I'll be needing people to help me read and help me do some reading. But let me, okay, for some reason my view is messed up, but that's okay. So what I'd like to do is share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope to start out with. And I say that because I'm going to be sharing about when my recovery first started, which wasn't in Codependence Anonymous. So it's a kind of an outside subject. I started my journey in recovery on 4/12 of 2010, and I found myself checking into a detox center. And one of my main memories that I have from being checked into that detox center was not only checked in, but I found while I was there that I just didn't know how I was going to live life on life's terms without drugs and alcohol. I didn't know how I'd go fishing or bowling or what I would do not being able to drink anymore, but I was determined not to. One of the first things I did, I was smoking at the time, and they made us smoke outside, of course. So they sent me out into this area that was looked like about 24 feet tall, bricked area, so you couldn't escape. And I remember thinking, I can't do this alone. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how it was going to work out. Kind of like what's happening today. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I knew I needed help. And so what I did was I was standing out there smoking and shaking. It was a little cool out because it was northern Arizona. And I remember thinking none of my childhood prayers seemed to be sufficient, seemed to be something that I can do in this situation. They haven't worked well for me in the past. And so for somewhere deep inside of me, I knew I was powerless, and I knew that I needed help. So I made up my own prayer, which I don't know if I'd heard it somewhere before or not, but it just went something like this. I just kind of looked up at the sun because it felt warm on my face, and it felt good being cold outside. And I just looked up and said, you whose rays illuminate the whole world, illuminate also my heart so that it too may do your will. And from that point on, I've used that prayer in all of my H&I commitments, all of my speaking that I've been asked to do, which I get to do. And anyway, so that's what I do, and I let my higher power take control. Helped me a lot with the anxieties and with being nervous, because it's not up to me. And it hasn't been up to me since that day. I haven't felt it necessary to drink since that day, but my life did become unmanageable. It felt unmanageable many times, but one time in particular on 4/28 of 2020, my life became completely unmanageable again. And I started doing therapy. My first session, she said, my therapist said, maybe you should check out CoDA.org and read the patterns and characteristics. And from that day on, I've also belonged to Codependence Anonymous, which is a miracle. It's a miracle. So what I would start with, and I share that information for a couple of reasons. All this information is to let you know, since I got into recovery, I have had a sponsor. I've had several sponsors. I've had relationships with friendships with many people in recovery, which we talk about in sponsorship as the power of five. CoDA Recovery mentions that in CoDA.org, mentions the power of five. So I've got at least 5 people in recovery that I can contact when things go south for me, or when I have questions, when I don't know. They happen to be one of the first people in my network, which I love because I was out of control in the beginning when I got to CoDA. Didn't know how this was going to work. So I've decided to share on some literature. I found this on the CoDA website. I also found it, well, actually, Core Publications. I was going to use the sponsorship brochure that just talks about the free one that talks about sponsorship, but I found this literature really amazing, and I'll be going ahead and sharing screen. I'd like people to help me do some reading, if you will, because we have a little reading in this brochure. And this is called Sponsorship, What's in It for Me? And I think you should be able to see that. I'll go ahead and start reading. And if you could raise your hands to read, our host and co-host will help. I'll say pass when I'm done reading, and then someone can pick it up from there. And when you're done reading, please say pass. Sponsorship, what's in it for me? This is the overview. Sponsorship has been a part of the Codependents Anonymous CoDA program at the local level from the very beginning, and literature was developed by the fellowship to reflect CoDA's early experience with sponsorship. Over the years, our collective experience has grown. This handbook is intended to reflect our increased awareness. This handbook addresses both parts of the sponsorship issue. In part 1 of the handbook, we investigate the sponsee's point of view, which might sound like this. I'm doing okay. I go to meetings. Why do I need a sponsor? Once that question is answered, we often hear, okay, you've convinced me. Having a sponsor is the next step. Now, what do I look for in a sponsor, and how do I find one? We discuss these questions in detail, and finally, we address sponsees' responsibilities and rights. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention is we are disabling the chat security so that people can chat amongst themselves. And I would like to mention that if you are willing to take on sponsees, please put your name in the chat to everyone, so that if someone likes what they hear about you or what you might have to share later on, they may contact you. I'll put my name in there as well. Part 2 of the handbook focuses on a continuing concern in CoDA, i.e., a lack of members willing to sponsor others, as well as a lack of sponsors who are actively working the 12 steps of Codependents Anonymous. We look at some of the roadblocks to sponsorship and provide solid suggestions aimed at answering the question, why aren't more people coming forward as sponsors? We also address that intrinsic questions members often have that highlight their fears in making this commitment. Taking it one step further, we look at sponsorship from the sponsor's perspective, answering the question, why should I sponsor? What's in it for me? And I'll go ahead and pass if someone would like to read part 1. a little lengthy, more lengthy than I thought it was going to be, but we'll continue anyway. As sponsees, what are our rights? Sponsors are neither authority figures nor our higher power. They are not in charge of our recovery. We are, along with our higher power. The following rights are not privileges to be earned, they are already ours. As sponsees, we have the right to say no, especially when feeling unready or unsafe, to be treated with dignity, respect, and appreciation, to terminate conversations when we feel the need, to own our own feelings, thoughts, and opinions, and to express them respectfully, to change our minds, make mistakes, and take responsibilities for our actions, to make our own choices independent of the wishes of our sponsors, to tell our sponsors when we don't know, don't understand, or disagree, to ask for what we want and need, to take care of ourselves no matter what the circumstances, to trust, respect, and love whomever we choose. Sponsorship, what's in it for me? Part 2. The sponsor's perspective, introduction. Many of us in Codependence Anonymous, CoDA, are unsure about our own ability to form healthy relationships. We wonder what we might possibly have to offer another person. The thought of becoming a sponsor may trigger our codependency issues. The ensuing agitation and anxiety may be unnerving. As a result, many of us may hesitate to step forward. Some of the issues especially problematic for codependents are creating and respecting boundaries, making and keeping commitments, making decisions, and speaking the truth when to do so would be uncomfortable. The following questions address these issues in the hope of allaying the fears associated with taking on a sponsorship role. The answers are intended to clarify and explain the sponsorship dilemma for codependents and to answer the question, sponsorship, what's in it for me? And would anyone else like to read? Please just raise your hands. I'll read some more. How much time will sponsoring take up? How much time are we willing to set aside? That is how much time sponsoring takes. The time commitment depends on discussions between our sponsees and ourselves. Together, we decide what works best for us both. Some of us find it useful to have a set time of the week when we meet with our sponsees for 1 or 2 hours. Perhaps before or after a meeting we both attend. Others may do short check-in calls more often. Sometimes we may go several weeks without hearing from our sponsees, although if this goes on for too long, we might question whether or not they are really interested in working with a sponsor. As sponsors, we often ask a new sponsee to make a conscious effort to call us every day for a set period of time, 1 month, 2 months, etc., even if it's just to leave a message checking in. However, schedules may not allow for this. Over time, sponsors and sponsees together discover what works best. As in all relationships, taking it day by day is a good method to follow. And can we sponsor if we haven't worked all 12 steps? Yes, we have a lot to offer long before we reach step 12, especially if we have a sponsor. If we have been attending meetings regularly and are working the steps in our own lives, we may well be ready to share our experiences with others. This is an appropriate topic to discuss with our own sponsors. I am aware of the time, you guys. I think we're almost done reading, and then we'll be able to take a break. Is it okay to be a temporary sponsor? As with everything in recovery, we sponsor one day at a time. One way to become comfortable with being a sponsor is to investigate temporary sponsorship. Often the time period for such an arrangement is left open-ended. We might want to commit to becoming sponsors for a couple of months and then reevaluate the relationship. We are not surprised to report that some sponsees are still working with their temporary sponsors 5 or 6 years later. How do we set initial boundaries with our sponsees? Sponsorship requires a commitment to be in a relationship. At the beginning of working together, we come together as sponsees and sponsors to develop and put in place healthy boundaries. The process allows both of us, sponsor and sponsee, to make our needs known, set guidelines, and discuss our expectations. Adjustments may be made later on. When we maintain these practices, we allow mutual growth and development to flourish within the relationship. Examples follow. As sponsors, how often do we expect to hear from our sponsees? What are the best times for our sponsees to call? When our sponsees leave messages, how soon can they expect a return phone call? How long are calls to be between our sponsees and ourselves? How long is a face-to-face meeting expected to last? How often should we reevaluate the relationship to assess the viability and progress of the relationship? What if we give poor advice? Sponsors don't give advice. As sponsors, we share our experiences and direct our sponsees to the appropriate recovery tools of CoDA. These might include reading CoDA literature, writing an exercise in the CoDA 12 Steps and 12 Traditions workbook, keeping a daily journal, attending a meeting, calling our sponsors, or praying to our higher power. Would anyone else like to read? There's one little part left here. I'm not going to show it all at the same time because the printing is too big, but it talks about its sponsor. Sponsoring another CoDA member promises to provide us with an opportunity for self-reflection and personal growth as we nurture, nudge, and support another person with the spiritual guidance of a higher power, offering both participants a relationship based on mutual respect and caring. And that is it. Okay, sorry that took a little longer. Somehow I forget that it takes longer to read out loud than it does reading to myself. Right. So John, codependent, back again. So thank you all for hanging in there with me on that first brochure. I really highly recommend all of CoDA's literature. There's so much to know and figure out. I know when I first started sponsoring and my other program, it was a little bit different than sponsoring in CoDA. In CoDA, I don't hold as tight a control on my sponsees for sure, but because they wouldn't listen to me if I did. But anyway, it's a little different, but it is a beautiful thing to be a part of. So in the second part of our meeting, and I'll need your help as well, we're going to do a little bit reading, but it's going to be a little different. What I'd like to do is have people share their experience with the different step prayers. We'll go ahead and start with the step 1 prayer, and we'll just work down to 12 because that's kind of the way we do things. We don't do step 10 before we do the first step. So they're numbered for a reason. All right, so I'll go ahead and share screen on what I put together here. And we are not starting with step 12. And I want to thank everybody that helped read because it is a little awkward trying to scroll and find our places, and you did very good. Thank you. So step 1, we admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. The step 1 prayer, in this moment, I do not have to control anyone, including me. And if I feel uncomfortable with what another person is doing or not doing, I can remind myself that I am powerless over this person, and I am powerless over my compulsion to act in inappropriate ways. I'll share a little bit on this one, and then maybe we take 1 or 2 other people. Don't want to take too long at these, but on the step 1 prayer, when I first got to CoDA, and I'll say this for the rest of my life, this prayer saved my life when I got into CoDA. I was so filled with guilt and shame about the intimate relationships that I had been in the past. They all came crashing down on me at one time when I hit bottom in my codependence, and all the enmeshment, all the things that I took personally, all the things that I took personal responsibility for. I didn't even realize it until I've been in CoDA for a while, but all the things in my childhood that I took responsibility for that weren't my fault. They were it was the way I was raised, but all those things came crashing down at me, and being the perfectionist that I was trying to be, I took responsibility for everything in every relationship. And I was so filled with guilt and shame that I couldn't stand myself. I was completely lost. And so the step 1 prayer gave me that little breath, that little relief that I could have to just take the focus off of myself and the guilt and shame to start working another program, and having faith that possibly at some point sanity would return to me, and I could be happy, joyous, and free once again. So that's my experience with the step 1 prayer. Would anyone like to share on that? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to step two. Step two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The step two prayer. In this moment, I can believe that I am never alone. I can experience a sense of freedom that having a higher power offers me. I can remind myself that believing is also an action, and if I am willing to practice it one moment at a time, I will develop faith. Does anyone have anything to share on this step and how the prayer has helped them in recovery? Thank you so much for sharing. And we'll go ahead and move to the third step. One thing that I would like to say is I didn't really put these together every time until I put them together. And the prayers are such a powerful affirmation of working this step for me. Step three, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. And it's amazing how that just happened to be underlined, made a decision. Not sure how word works like that, but it did. Step three, prayer. In this moment, I can choose my own higher power. I can set aside all the old beliefs about who I am not, and who I am, a child of God. I can remind myself that a faith in a higher power becomes a faith in me, and that my recovery lies in being true to myself and to my higher power. And would anyone like to share on this step? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to step four. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the prayer. In this moment, I am willing to see myself as I truly am, a growing, unfolding spiritual being, resting in the hands of a loving God. I can separate who I am from what I've done, knowing that the real me is emerging, loving, joyful, and whole. That's amazing to me. I was just a little share myself as I was reading that. I really, every time I read these prayers and really take them to heart, I just they're just so freeing. It almost makes me want to start crying just out of thankfulness and joy that it's okay. You know, it's okay to be human. It's okay to be needy of a higher power. So step five, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Well, that's a tough one, as if four wasn't tough enough, right? Step five, prayer. In this moment, I will acknowledge myself for doing what was most difficult for me. I will rest in the accepting presence of my higher power. I know I have deepened my commitment to the journey of recovery by opening myself and my heart to a fellow human being. All right, does anyone have anything to share on step five? One of the things that my sponsor always says, I hear it all the time, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. So if I can be vulnerable enough to share it, that's when the healing starts. All right, shall we move on to six? We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Prayer. In this moment, I am entirely ready to be freed of all my shortcomings. In this moment, I am ready to surrender these defects of character to God, knowing that the power of willingness to heal is great. Each new step I take in my recovery, no matter how small it may appear, is an affirmation of my wholeness. And well, I know someone that I know that might be here says that, just like I feel these defects of character always makes me feel a little shame in that. So sometimes I like to say my blankies, my safety behaviors, rather than defects of character, things I have to change, things that the inner terrorist doesn't want to admit to other people. And to if you knew me you wouldn't like me. All those kinds of things, all those bad things that I've come to see in myself aren't really true. So would anyone like to share on step 6? All right. 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. In the prayer, in this moment, I ask my higher power to remove all my shortcomings, relieving me of the burden of my past. In this moment, I place my hand in God's, trusting that the void I experience is being filled with my higher power's unconditional love for me and those in my life. This is pretty powerful as well for me. It's in this moment. They repeat it, I think they repeat it twice for a reason, because I always have to, it seems in my recovery, I always have to come back to make a decision again and again. In this moment, I can only live in this moment. Does anyone have anything to share on the 7th step? Didn't mean to go long, but it happens. I would support anyone that is interested in lining these up, lining the actual steps up with the step prayers and seeing how they relate in your lives and in your experience, and working the steps. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the 8th step. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The prayer. In this moment, I see the impossible become not only possible, but real. As I forgive myself for my shortcomings, I am able to forgive others, opening the way for a true and lasting change in my behavior. Thank you, God. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Anyone like to share on the 8th step, on the 8th step prayer? Let's go ahead and move on to step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And the prayer? In this moment, I trust my higher power to guide me in making sincere and honest amends. In this moment, I experience my gratitude for Codependence Anonymous and the 12 steps of recovery, knowing that as I am willing to live this program, share the fellowship, and walk with God, I am free. 10th step, continue to take personal inventory, and when we're wrong, promptly admitted it. The prayer, in this moment, I live my life in a new way. As I continue to open my heart and mind, little by little, one day at a time, I reveal my true self, mend my relationships, and touch God. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. The prayer. In this moment, I quiet my thoughts and open my mind and heart to God's guidance for me. In this moment, I feel the gentle peace that conscious contact with God allows. If I am troubled and in doubt or joyful and serene, I turn to God. I know my path will be revealed and the way to my highest good will be made known. That's quite a step. I like to refer to this as the God of my not understanding, and just leave it at that. And hopefully I have faith to get through another day. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share on this? All right, we'll move on to the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other codependents and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And the prayer? In this moment, I thank God for my spiritual awakening. In this moment, I choose to live all the principles of this simple program. I know the wisdom working through me will touch all I meet with God's love and understanding. I am at peace. Well, I'll say just a little bit in my sponsoring in CoDA. I've just relied on my higher power a lot because as I've learned through sponsoring, everyone is different. So it's different. In CoDA, I've had to let go a lot of my wanting to wanting to tell people what to do or offering unsolicited advice. In CoDA, I've learned to, as one of my boundaries and one for my sponsees, I've learned to ask if they want me to reply to anything they share with me. Not sure if that answers your question, but that's been my experience, and I'm new at this. I've just started sponsoring in CoDA, and I'm finding it to be quite different than my other 12-step program with the people that I'm sponsoring, as well as sponsoring itself. It's just a learning experience. I think it's motives. I think I really have to check my motives whenever I'm wanting to um, do anything or say anything with a sponsee. In my CoDA program and sponsoring especially, it's I'm learning as I go, and I never really thought about setting boundaries. I just before CoDA, I just knew something was wrong by the way I was feeling, how I had a boundary crossed and I didn't even realize it until I had that gut feeling that, oh no, what have I done? So in CoDA, I'm learning to set boundaries as I sponsor as well. So I guess what I'm saying is um, I have to rely really highly on my higher power to know when a boundary needs to be set, but it's also as I go. I'm learning as I go. I'm experience recovery just like anyone that I might be sponsoring. It's a learning thing. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. I just have to take it easy. All right. Well, I don't have anything else. Just thank you all for being here. Thank my higher power for putting it on.